Hey, Christopher Harrop here. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Chris Harrop. I love Chris Harrop.
Good
dude.
Well, I guess I'll start officially. Welcome to Lunchtime AMA. I'm Ethan. This is Alex, and in our continued quest to have all of the CC panelists after today, only the elusive Adam Grace will remain.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I've been looking forward to talk to you for a while because I know we have this music thread in common.
Yeah.
But before that, I just want to say that I think I knew your name 20 years before I even met you.
Yeah, ditto. Yeah, you were my little brother before you were my little brother.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Like I had met Adam fairly early. I'd met Lee Asher fairly early, but
right.
you were, Aaron was in California for so long, and I visited him maybe twice.
Right.
He came home more than I came out there.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Aaron's a world traveler. He's happy to go where you are, right?
Right, totally happy. Yeah, I mean, he's been to Japan and stuff, and I hear these stories and heads catching on fire and bullets being caught, all these kind of things.
I was there when the head was caught on fire. No,
yeah,
that was our good buddy Wayne. He was on a TV show. We were in the Dominican Republic down there doing magic shows, and yeah, it was a horrific time. But Wayne, what a trooper! What a great man he is. He healed, and even though his head was caught on fire, you can't even tell. If you stand next to the guy, you would never even know it happened. And I think it says something about his strength of spirit. He's just a really, really strong dude, and he made it through like it didn't happen. And and he was strong the whole way through the thing. It was it very inspiring to see him come through and be stronger than he was on the other when it happened. So
right on.
Yeah, weird times, man. Weird times, that's for sure.
Was there something happening in the country at the time? What was going on?
It was weird. We were there in the Dominican Republic to do magic TV shows to promote this brand that I had just recently become a part of. And there was theater shows and all these things that were happening in the Dominican Republic. And really it was about BJ Bueno, our buddy that came on and talked about his shuffle, the Muy Bueno shuffle on CC.
You mean right now up for a Kanji BJ Bueno for Lecture of the Year?
That's the very same, yes. He's actually, I think BJ is one of the greatest close-up magicians that there is. I'm inspired every time I hang out with him. But getting back to it, BJ put together this trip to go down there because he's originally from the Dominican Republic, and he wanted to just share magic in his homeland. And he was trying to find ways to be on stage and perform, and he just basically built this machine from the ground up. And I was invited to come and be a part of it. So what happened with Wayne was that we were doing TV shows to promote. And the TV show host of this particular TV show was a guy who was into voodoo, like no joke voodoo, like that was his religion. And we saw, like, we were in a dressing room doing makeup for one of these shows, and his TV show came on in this dressing room. And we watched this guy literally do voodoo incantations and rituals as part of his TV show. It wasn't even the TV show that we're talking about where the bad stuff happened, right? So this guy, just as a known voodoo guy, he contacts our group before we go down there, asks if he can do some magic, but he wants to do something like outlandish. That's not magic. He wants to get like a railroad spike or something and shove it through his arm, right? Like, whoa, that's not a trick, man. You're just going to shove a piece of metal in your arm,
Right.
And we asked him not to. So what happened was he just impromptu did a trick on the set after, BJ and Wayne, they were on the set. They did some magic tricks, talk about what they were there to talk about. The guy's like, before you go, let me do a trick for you. It's all in Spanish. And, he ends up getting this stuff called Agua de Florida. It's like an aftershave alcohol mixture, but they use it a lot in ritual, in voodoo, because it's a high alcohol content and it's extremely flammable.
Yeah.
So this guy has his hands like this, has a bunch of this fluid poured into his hands and has it lit on fire. So now he's holding a pool of fire. And then he says something about giving a blessing and he puts it on Wayne's head. And I wish there was more to the story. I wish there was something clever that happened. It was just this guy was not thinking. He was a jerk. And our friend went through a horrible experience. And in turn, all of us went through a horrible experience because we watched our friend go through this and, going to the hospital and having to go every single day to get treatments. And, it was a whole thing. But like I said, Wayne, such a strong spirit, he came out of that thing and forgive this guy. He's such a strong human. He came out of this better than he was when he went into it because he had to forgive, man. He had to forgive and get past it and get on with his life and keep on going. Because, you know, how easy would it be to take some little episode like that in your life and have that determine like what you are for the rest of your life? You know what I mean? And if you talk to Wayne about it, it's like it never happened. So there it is.
Yeah, Christopher Harrop's like, WTF? Like, yeah, for sure, WTF. Hey, Dan Rifkins wants to say hi, but right now he's getting a tattoo.
Right on, Dan Rifkin.
So
I hope it's a good one. I hope it turns out well. I love Dan. He's such a cool guy. You know, he came out to that last summit and he just was blowing my mind. We were staying up late and he was showing me all kinds of great tricks, and, you know, we were having fun playing with invisible thread, and, you know, it was good to geek out with that guy on magic stuff. I look forward to the next one.
Greg and Baxter said, hi. Oh, Daniel Rifkin says it's a joke. Sorry, man. I can't read sarcasm on text. Not good at it.
Put it in italics or something when it's sarcasm.
Yeah. Okay. Now BJ Bueno is a friend of my brother's. I still haven't met.
It's inevitable.
It's inevitable. It'll happen one day.
Right.
We will get out of the house one day, and it will happen.
Oh, there is that too. Yeah, I guess that's keeping all that from happening for real, isn't it?
Yeah. I did have a question about music, because I know we were talking about music when we came on. I know, like me, it's your first love, right? Just talk about, like, you know, I just don't want to throw it out there and say talk about music in general, but before magic, the pre-magic music. You know? Sure.
Well, it's interesting because music actually is what led me to magic and being bit by the magic bug for real, right? Because when I was a kid, I totally had, like, you know, a magic kit gifted to me, and I probably did a couple of the gags out of there, but I was never any good at it. And I was not committed to reading these old manuscripts that are really poorly written. So I never did any of the tricks from them. You know, I just had tricks that were gifted to me. But it was later, and it wouldn't have happened for me without music, I think, looking back. The reality is that I needed guitar when I was a kid. You know, I needed to play guitar. It was like a thing that had to happen for me. And out of that, I learned how to practice, right? Like, I wouldn't be any good at magic if I didn't have guitar first, because with guitar, I had a real instructor, and I really learned how to gain knowledge and how to, you know, gain skill. And I was maniacal about it. You know, I would practice for more hours than I should have at a clip, you know? And I had a really great teacher. There was a thing down in Hollywood called MIT, not to be confused with the one on the East Coast. MIT was the Musicians Institute of Technology. And it was literally all the great musicians down in Hollywood trying to find a way to make a living while they were trying to get signed and become rock stars, I think, right? And under the MIT umbrella, there was PIT, which was the Percussion Institute, BIT, which was the Bass Institute, and GIT, which was the Guitar Institute of Technology. And in the very beginning of the GIT, it was a special thing. And honestly, looking back at it, and I was on the outside looking in, you know, to me, it was like it was a dream thinking about all these guitar players at this place. Right. It honestly reflects a lot of like what CC is, you know, a lot of camaraderie. Everyone wants everyone to be better, and everyone's just trying to share so they can get more info, and just, you know, rising tide lifts all the boats kind of a thing. Right.
Right. Sure.
Eventually that school sort of went defunct because corporate interest came in, bought the thing, and they were trying to make money off of it. And it lost the original spirit. Well, my instructor was from that original beginning crop of that. So he had this beautiful spirit of, you know, sharing and just wanting everybody to be better. And he came back to Northern California after he finished where I live. I live in Northern California, and he came back from Southern California back up here, and he taught at the local music store while he was trying to make his band become a signed band and try to get a record deal, the whole deal.
Sure.
And he taught a lot of guys in town, and I was infatuated. I could never get enough. And I was, you know, probably had a pretty addictive personality at the time that I started when I was a kid. And I ended up becoming his guitar tech, right? Okay. A glorified roadie that also sets up the guitar gear and tunes the guitars and changes the strings and gives the guys a towel and catches the guitars when they throw them. Like, I was doing all that stuff, right?
You ever do a Prince, dude? You ever do a Prince over the head?
No, he would just throw it at me, and I have to catch it, and I never dropped it. So it was a good thing.
What band was he in? Can you say?
It's a band you would never know of because they were quasi-famous in Northern California in the early 90s, mid 90s, right? So there's no way you would ever know who they are.
We have a thing like that in Baltimore called Crack the Sky. Okay, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I know about Crack the Sky. They were probably similar vein. So when I'm at the end of high school, they have a manager, right? They have all this label interest in Southern California. Like I'm sure you heard all of it with the Crack the Sky band, all this same kind of stuff with Total Reflection, right?
Totally.
So this manager puts together this tour of the Pacific Northwest. We're going to work our way through Oregon, do all of Washington State, do a couple Canada shows, and work our way back down to Northern California. And it's like a 2.5, 3-week tour. And I am a junior in high school, and I'm going to go on the road with my guitar tech and teach, and tune his guitars for him. But I have to convince my mom that it's the right thing to do for summer vacation, right?
How long is it supposed to be? Like the whole summer?
No, it's only like 2-3 weeks. So it's not bad. It's not bad. But at the same time, I mean, I'm leaving, my mom and dad peripherally know about this whole rock and roll thing I'm doing, but now I'm going to leave for a few weeks and go on the road with a band. Like what is that about? So this band, these guys, I guess I was imperative enough to what they were doing that each individual band member came to my house, didn't tell any of the other guys in the band. They just came over and just wanted to tell my parents how cool it was that I was part of their organization and how they're going to look after me. If you allow your son to go on this thing, I will look after him. He's not going to go hungry. I'm going to make sure he's taken care of. We'll bring him back to you unharmed, right? It was a whole thing.
I think you're just telling me the plot of Almost Famous is what I think is happening.
I guess it does make a parallel to it leads to magic, I promise. So what happens is we go on the road and it's a cheap tour, so it's a show every single night, right? There's no days off. We would get afternoons off before we go and do the show, right? And we were this California band, so we were headlining all these shows. So it was, it was weird because we're in this weird place. We play these small towns and, we would have sellout shows in the middle of like Oregon or in the middle of Washington State because it was like the entertainment that came to their town. You know what I mean? So we go to Seattle, and in Seattle, the bass player pulls me aside. He's like, hey. And every other band member had done this, and it was his turn. He's like, hey, come on, you and me, we're going. Where are we going? Oh, okay, we're leaving. There was 2 other road crew members that were like 20 years older than me, right? They just loved this band. They were on the road. And they're eating bologna sandwiches and donuts, but every other band member is tapping me and taking me out to dinner, putting down their own credit card to pay for the kid that's on the road with them because they promised my mom that they would take care of me.
Right.
So we're in Seattle and we go to dinner. I go to dinner with the bass player and we end up going to the mall that's right by there. We're in the harbor in Seattle proper. Yeah. And it's Pikes Peak Mall, right? Where you're there. There's all the guys throwing the fish like you see on TV. Like we watch the guys doing the fish tossing. And we go into Pikes Peak Mall, and inside Pikes Peak Mall, there's this awesome magic store called Seattle Magic. Okay. And it's like straight out of a movie. Like they have all the big, the big old posters, and there's like several of them. Everybody in there just looks like a curmudgeon, and like, it's an old magic store that's really cool, right? And they do their job. They sell me a beginner's trick. But the guy I'm there with, he sort of dodges off and does something, and I buy this trick, and we don't say another word about it. So now, a few nights pass. We do a couple nights on the road, and we're in this town called Wenatchee, Washington. Sold out show in Wenatchee. Shout out to Wenatchee if you live in Wenatchee. It's an amazing time.
Greg Chase says Pikes Place Mall.
It is, right. Pikes Peak is what I said. That's the racetrack. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Pikes Place. I'm sorry if you live there and I ruined the image of your mom. So anyways, so we're going through, we have these few nights and I start to apply my music mind to this magic thing. I learned how to practice playing guitar, and I took little moments, secret moments for the next few days and learned this trick. It was a simple trick with 2 handkerchiefs. I could put a handkerchief inside the other, blow, it's gone. Show the handkerchief. I blow again. Now the handkerchief's inside and I have 2 handkerchiefs. Very simple trick, very easy to understand. And, rock and roll band on the road. After the show's over, sitting in a hotel room, the whole band, the whole road crew, you can imagine the scene. These guys are all sitting in there partying, and I think they're in the middle of a game of quarters, right? So they have a glass, they're banking a quarter off the table, and they're, all drinking. And I see this moment, like, hey, this would be it. This could be the moment I could do this magic trick that I just bought. So I do this magic trick for all these guys, and there's stunned silence.
Right.
Like full minute, right? A full minute. They're all just quiet and looking at me. And like a couple of the dudes just look at each other. And the three biggest guys, like two road crew guys and the biggest guy in the band, they all stand up and they're like, all right, now you better tell us how you did it. It's like, what? Did you tell us how you did that or we're going to kick your ass? You know, I was like, what? It's like, whoa, it worked. It worked. I think I could do this magic thing. And really, that was like a revelation to me because I was looking at the scene. I was in this room, right? I'm looking at the fact that there's 5 band members. There's 3 crew members. And that's how we're putting on these shows that we're doing, right? All of those humans have to do this thing.
Right.
And I did this magic trick and it was me.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, that's way less egos to deal with. I just have to deal with my own ego so I can put on a show for people. And it was like a revelation to me. And that's when the bug hit me. After that, I found the magic store here in my town and, you know, it was over. There was no turning back after that.
Was there anything to the fact that you found yourself, you know, at the GIT, at the MIT, and then you're going off with this band, and all of a sudden the thing you were doing for fun had become a job pretty quickly?
Well, it took a while for it to be a job because in the beginning I was still married to music, you know, and
Right.
when I was a kid, music was where it was at. The looking at magic as a way to like make a living or make any money at, that didn't come until later. It really came out of working with a company that I was just fortunate that in Northern California, when I got into magic, there were some people that were really passionate about magic and they were doing some cool things. And it started out with a guy that he had a resume writing service, right? In the day and age when, you know, it's the 90s, people don't really have personal computers widespread. There is no internet, right?
Right.
This guy would write a resume for you. He had like a word processing program that had macros where he could sit with you, interview you, get a couple facts and figures, plug it in, let the macro run, and it would give you like a 4-page resume and like you could go get a job, right? And then in the back, he had this whole room full of different kinds of paper so you could pick your paper that you printed the thing on. The point is that he had that business and he was also a magician. And he had a guy that was sort of an investor in town that invested in this thing called A1 Multimedia. And A1 Multimedia made some of the first magic instructional VHS tapes, right?
Okay.
Magic VHS tapes came out in the early 80s and they were expensive. They were like $100 a piece. And in the early 80s, that's a lot of money, right?
Right.
Well, then a company in the Midwest did it. Eventually it made it to California. And the guy that was putting this stuff together, pardon me, he was basically bringing these guys out that he's making all these instructional videos with. He's bringing them in to do lectures for the local magic guys that were in this thing called the Sacramento Secret 7. It got bigger, but, you know, it started out with 7 guys and they were all these, you know, it was like this magic club, you know, it was a magic club of these guys that were just passionate about it. And they started putting together their own money and saying, well, why don't we bring in guys to come and lecture for us and teach us magic, right? And they started bringing like big names in that were on lecture tour and they could make a stop in Northern California. Sometimes it was a destination they would come up here because the other thing that came out of that is that this guy would then shoot an instructional video with them. So they could sign a contract and get residuals on a product. And it was, you know, there was incentive for them to come up here.
Sure.
Out of that, what happened is that all these lectures were happening in Northern California. And I got in right at the tail end that was happening when they started to have a real video business. And what they were doing then was they started this thing called the Convention at the Capitol. Sacramento is where I live, and it's the capital of California. And they called this thing Convention at the Capitol because it was here, and they would bring in international talent and do the same thing, right? They would just have them stay for a week, and they would shoot every day for 2 weeks after and get everybody's content down so they could then sell it throughout the course of the year, have the convention come around, and they could re-up and have more product, right? It was a beautiful little business plan.
Sure.
But through that ended up being like my magic college was, you know, I started working for this company. And it was weird because I was working with them because I wanted to work in magic. I wanted to be around magic. And I, you know, if I worked at the magic place, they would give me deals on magic stuff, you know, and I was hungry. I needed magic stuff, you know? Yeah. So I'm hanging out at this magic place and they were giving me like grunt work to do. Like they were the first company that opened up US Playing Card Company to doing custom print runs that were not just decks of cards, right? Like they would print up these decks of cards that like, they would sell spots in it, right? They're like, all right, so a deck of cards is 56 spots, right? It's the 52 cards, the 2 jokers, and the 2 ad cards, right?
Right.
They would take all those and it would be 56 spots and they would sell it because they opened up the deal with US Playing Card Company that they would make fake-o cards for them, like back on both sides or a face on both sides or like a Miss Pip or, you know, weird things like this. And they went to all the magicians in the United States at first.
Right.
And they basically sold them, you know, 10 spots, a dozen spots. And guys like Daryl, you know, guys like Bob Kohler, they would buy these spots and they buy these gaffed cards for their gaffed card tricks that they would then sell. Right. And it was, you know, another sideline for them. The problem is that these things would come 56 decks or 56 cards in a deck. There's your box. But 8 of them are this guy, 10 are this guy, 2 go to this guy, 3 go to this guy inside that deck. And they had those things sitting there for months. And I kept coming in going, all right, I want to get that. Let me get that book. Can you guys order this for me? Right. They were like, they became like my second magic shop because they could get stuff that my local magic shop wouldn't get for whatever reason, you know?
Right.
So they, you know, slowly were like, hey, so you're pretty good with cards, huh? Yeah, sure. Could we, you know, maybe trade you? Like maybe you could get magic and you could do a little work, or maybe we could get, you know, give you some money and pay you under the table. And it became this thing. That was my foot in the door. And I started separating those decks until I just couldn't see straight, right? I would just separate these things out, and I hated it. And eventually that led to, like, you know, I moved up in that company, right? That was just the ground floor of that company. And I ended up being like their magic expert. And like, eventually that led to me being a production assistant on the videos that they were producing. And that's really when I started to get deep into it, because I could ask anything I want, because it wasn't about like, here's this magic guy and he's got these magic secrets. Now it's, hey, we're having lunch together. We're having dinner together. Hey, where do you live again? You're married, right? You have kids? And I get to know these people as humans, right? I get to know the human side of them. And that was when I started to be able to see a way into like actually being able to do magic for people, when I understood who these magic people were. Because in the beginning, it was like I'm hanging out with Godzilla, you know, or I'm hanging out with Frankenstein. It's like this otherworldly thing that, you know, is allowing me to sit next to it. You know what I mean? And until I penetrated that first layer of skin, it wasn't going to work for me, you know? But what happened out of that is that company, I got pretty well liked there. A lot of people said nice things about me. And there was a show that happened, and it was my first like real professional gig. Cause I had done a couple of like, you know, birthday parties. I did kids' birthday parties when I was younger, but you know, it was never like a business, you know, it was never like, wow, I'm making money doing this, but I got tapped to do this thing. And it was, the district attorney was doing a re-election campaign, and at a country club, they were doing a fundraiser. And at this fundraiser, they were having magic.
Right.
So I was tapped. It was me and 2 other local guys that were like the best close-up guys in town, all did close-up magic at this party, right, to warm it up. And then there was, you know, it was a banquet situation. So it was like dinner and, you know, hors d'oeuvres, the whole thing. There's cocktail party. I'm working the cocktail party. Eventually everyone sits down and they eat dinner, and then there's a big show. And the big show is Mike Maxwell, the guy who brought me in, who is the owner of A1. He's the MC and doing magic, you know, and then he's introducing Roger Klaus, who's one of my first real teachers. Roger Klaus did the first spot on stage. Then Tom Mullica does the second spot on stage, does the whole act, right? Not only is he killing us with the comedy, but he does the whole cigarette thing. It's before he switched and became Red Skelton. Right. And then it was Jeff Hobson, who's like a famous Vegas guy. He closed the show. Like he's the guy that's famous for doing the watch steal. He literally stole 10 watches from everybody that helped him do any trick throughout the course of his show. At the end, he's all, and everybody else. And he holds up 10 watches. He stole everybody's watch that he touched.
Back when everybody wore watches.
Back when everybody wore watches. That's right. they're making a comeback, I think.
Right.
Well, Apple's trying to make it a comeback because it's another product to sell, right?
Right. Yeah. Dick Tracy.
So,
anyway, yeah.
So that was my first like real gig. And out of that, work started to come because I was a proven guy. All the people that were there would recommend because they saw me do it. They knew I could do it. And that's when it started to happen, right? But it didn't happen until I got involved in the magic industry proper, right?
And how many years from buying your silk scarf trick in Seattle to that show?
About 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a pretty quick up ramp because the other thing that was happening for me is that I was recognizing that music was changing. You know, it wasn't the same kind of music that I got into, and stylistically things were just different. And I had a different point of view towards it. You know, I wasn't like all about it all the time. Now I was like, I wanted to play with specific people and specific projects to do certain things that I wanted to do in music, you know?
Right.
And because of that changing relationship with music, it opened the door for magic to become something different and have more of its own life. And because, again, like what I said before, how it's like when you're in a band, it's all these egos that are competing to create this piece of art, right?
Right.
And when it's you, it's your ego and maybe a couple other people that you consult with after you've already done it, but it's you creating this artwork. And that ended up being the thing that sort of took over my mind. I was like, I like that better. I like being in charge because I know what I like and I know what people respond to when I do magic. And to me, the power seemed in being, you know, being able to be the guy that chose my own destiny, right? And it seemed like I could do that more with magic than I could with music, you know?
And where in this did you meet like Aaron? Because that's got to be my touchstone for everything.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was these convention at the Capitals were happening, right? They're bringing in people so they can shoot videos with them and sell these, right? That's the business model for this company I'm working for at the time. And I remember Lee and Aaron were coming to that convention and, well, don't tell anyone, but they were sneaking in. And it wasn't a big secret. Like they were like the guys that were known to be sneaking in. And like, it was weird because the guys that put on the convention, they all openly told me that, yeah, when I was their age, I was totally sneaking into conventions too, right? I mean, it's just like a thing that happened with younger guys. And, you know, it's part of the convention world.
Was it just like an age thing that the guys couldn't get in? Or was it like you had to buy a ticket?
Yeah, because conventions are always, you know, they're always like, you got to spend at least $100, couple $100, few $100. Some of them are like $500 and $600 for the big name national ones or international ones.
Right.
So you're paying, right? In fact, you know, there was one time I couldn't afford to go to one of those conventions at the Capitals. And when you know it, the year that I couldn't afford to go was the year that Juan Tamariz was here.
Right.
And it was the worst. I was like heartbroken, you know? So I go to this convention, you know, because to me magic conventions at that time, they were happening so frequently that they were as much like a family reunion as they were like, you know, let's go learn magic. You know, it was like, for me, it was like, I get to go catch up with my magic friends. You know, I get to go see the people that I care about in magic.
Sure.
And, you know, I mean, all the people watching here, I'm sure they have something that's parallel to this. For me, all the best people I know in my life have totally come out of magic, you know? Right. And when you see that that's the gift, one of the gifts that you get out of magic, it's tough to like deny it, right? Because like you get strong people to come your way and you go, whoa, how else would I have ever met this person? I'm so happy. I'm so fortunate, right? So
CC's made up of you and Adam and Aaron, and you know, like I've been saying, you know, 20 years I've known you before I met you. So
right, exactly. Yeah. So I met Aaron briefly at one of these conventions at the Capitals, had a brief interaction with him and Lee, and it didn't go much further than that. But Lee was shooting this thing called Hit the Road, which was a magic video that had all kinds of magic people in it. Right. And he was basically editing that. So I went from A1 to working for Murphy's Magic Supplies for like a decade too. So I was working behind the scenes in the magic industry. And the reason for that was needed medical insurance. You know, I needed medical insurance for my kids. You know, I have 2 kids. My kids are grown now, but at the time, you know, I needed to be a square guy with like a regular paycheck. And, you know, because with magic, sometimes it's not regular. Sometimes you have to budget and you have to, you know, spread your money out a little bit further. And it's a different point of view, you know, and at that time, I couldn't have that point of view and, you know, be responsible to my kids, you know.
It's always a fun conversation. So, you know, when you meet other parents. So what do you do? Oh, I work in a magic warehouse. Okay. What do you do? I work for my brother's magic community on the internet. You know, it's like,
right.
They don't hear that every day.
Right. And people do the same thing every time. They go, oh, wow, that must be so interesting. I never even knew you could work in magic, right?
Exactly.
You get weird questions.
You know,
so really I met Lee through that. He would come to Murphy's and he was editing all this footage. Him and Paul Wilson were coming and editing all this footage, and we're talking tricks the whole time. You know, I'm at my job, but, you know, they're a table away from me. I go, hey, man, show me this thing where you're doing the blah, 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 and, you know, oh, yeah, do this, you know. And after work, you know, for the time that they were editing, I was hanging out with those guys every day after work because they were staying at a hotel, and they'd come to my house or I'd go to their hotel, and we would just, you know, stay up until the wee hours of the night talking magic, you know.
Right on.
And through that, you know, I knew Lee. Lee mentioned Aaron a few times, and we knew that we were eventually going to meet up. And eventually it did happen, but it happened at a convention in Las Vegas.
Okay.
I started going to a lot of the national conventions at a certain point, and I went to one of these Vegas conventions, totally went by myself, had my own hotel room, and Aaron was there, and I bumped into him at the bar, and we hit it off like immediately. Like we were just like friends immediately, right?
Right.
Excuse me. And he was at the time, I remember there was some like, he had some little beef with maybe a Magic Castle guy that had come to this Las Vegas convention as well. And those two dudes had like a little falling out, little scuffle or something, a little argument or something. And Aaron was like, man, I got to get out of here. Screw this convention or something to that effect, right? He's like, you want to go and hang out? And I was like, yeah, man, let's go and hang out. And we left. We left the convention and we just started driving around Vegas. We went to the Matt King show. We went to, different casinos. We eventually go back to hotel rooms and we're just talking shop, just talking magic. And then, this is like the first night of this convention. And throughout the, conventions usually last 3-4 days. And when they're those Vegas ones. And, the next day I get together with him and there's this guy, Sean Begonia, who was a few years ago, he was advertising in all the magic magazines. He had this like programmable thread system that would allow you to do this like dancing Hank. Like this Hank would like jump in your hands, dance over your head, go into a bottle and come back out. And you could program the whole thing like it was a remote control, like a remote control car, right? So you could program the whole show and then you just choreograph it and then you work with that program going every time. This guy got a suite at this hotel where the convention is so that he can bring up all the big name magicians to come and see this stage trick. And he would do a demo for him in the suite, in the living room of the suite. He would show them the dancing Hank. Right. And he was trying to sell it to like David Copperfield and Jeff McBride and Lance Burton, like all the guys that could afford this big system, right?
Right.
But when he wasn't doing these demos, this was the hangout spot for all the guys at the convention to come and hang out and not have to be on the convention floor.
Right.
That was where I really solidified what was happening friendship-wise between Aaron and I, because we started talking about sleight of hand stuff. And I'd bought his book, and I'd worked pretty hard on the gravity half pass. And I had hit the wall with the gravity half pass. I could get it to look okay, but it was like not happening. And I was like, all right, man, we have a quiet moment here. We're just sitting on the couch. I was like, let me just show you where I'm at. Perhaps you can help me.
Okay.
Like, yeah, do it, man. I know I've seen a lot of people. I've taught a lot of people. I'm sure I can help you within a few minutes. Like
14 hours later.
No, it was literally like I did it. And he's like, oh, great. All right. I know what I wrote in the book. and I know what you're doing wrong based on what you read in my book. So let me just say a few things to you. And he said a few things. And he said, now try it again. I did it again. He's like, no, it's good. Now think about this. And he gave me like a couple more ideas. And within 5 minutes, I was literally in a place that I'd never been before, where I was starting to have like success. It's starting to look like an invisible move. And I was like, whoa, this guy knows what he's talking about. And of course he started showing me all kinds of other stuff that there was no way I was going to do at the time. And, that all led to, hanging out with your brother and trying to learn stuff. Because for me, it was like, Aaron lives in Hollywood and I live in Northern California, and it might as well have been another planet. Cause I was trying to, I went to the Magic Castle when I was like 21. I was enamored with the place. I needed to be in the Magic Castle, but it was like, how do you go into the Magic Castle just by yourself? Like you got to be invited, and like, it was a whole thing. And that ended up being another facet of our friendship that opened up, just because he's like, oh, you like the Magic Castle? I live right down the street. We should talk. Let's get you in there. And him and Adam Grace were doing this thing in the downstairs of the Magic Castle. There's a place called the W.C. Fields Bar. And it's got all this W.C. Fields memorabilia, but more importantly, it's got this raised bar that's basically like another showroom in the castle where people can do magic. Sure. And there's a bartender that's serving drinks. So it's really a cool little scene down there. It's like real bar magic. And because it's downstairs, it's like its own place. So people are super loud and you can't hear it like halfway up the steps. It's a neat thing. Right. Adam and Aaron had a deal with the castle to work there for like a weekend at a clip, right? They would book a weekend and it would be the two of them doing bar magic, trading off spots. And they'd bring out, like guest performers. And they invited me to come be a guest performer. Boy, I was shaking in my boots. This was like my real chance to like perform at the Magic Castle for the first time, right?
Right on.
I was shaking in my boots, and I got up there, and and there's like a little raised platform you stand up on, you do the thing, and like I just went up there and did what I did. I just was like, well, I'm here. I just got to do it. I'm just going to do magic. And I just did, you know, the best tricks I knew, did like 15 minutes and killed.
Right.
Like they all were cheering. And I was like, I was on cloud 9. Like, wow, I really did it. And they liked me, you know, it was like a whole thing. And then like right after I did my spot, you know, another guest performer comes in, and it was the first time I met Jonathan Levitt, right? He comes up and he does a set, and it was like, wow, I'm here. I'm at the castle. I'm hanging with the guys. And that led to basically Adam and Aaron sort of talking to the powers that be at the castle and saying, hey, you know, Alex is pretty good, man. You should probably book him. He'd probably be a good thing for you guys to do. You know, probably be like a feather in your cap. And that's how it started. I just did well at that show, and then next thing I know, I'm booked to work the close-up room.
Kind of sounds like what we saw with Mark Correa this past year, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. You have friends vouch for you, and you can go pretty far, right?
Right. We do have a question about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The story has brought up a couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, people saying it's a great story. Dustin says it sounds like a dream. But Joe Babcock wanted to know specifically in that set what tricks you did.
Oh, boy, can I remember. Well, I have this Al Karan trick that's like a mind reading where we read each other's mind. That was a popular one at the time. I would guess that I probably did Ambitious Card because at the time I was leaning pretty heavily on it.
Okay.
I can't remember if I can't remember. I might have it in my notebooks. Ask me again sometime or send me a message and maybe I can find out, but I don't remember specifically.
Okay.
But I would say if you're in that situation, just do the best tricks that you have. That's the only thing you could do.
Right.
Just do the best material you got.
Because, I mean, you're doing it for an audience that comes to see, you know, there's so many tricks and there's so many old standards, but you're doing it for an audience that's come to see magic no matter what. And they're going to multiple rooms.
Yeah.
Do people ever do magicians at the castle, this is from me, talk to other magicians at the castle to say, hey, don't do your variation on this because I'm doing a variation on this. I mean, that kind of thing for the same night.
I didn't ever get that impression. But the other thing to keep in mind is that it's a busy club and not everybody that gets in there gets to see every show. You know? And I would guess that if you saw someone do the same trick in 2 different rooms in the castle, performers are so different that I would guess that you would have to do some mental gymnastics to go, oh, that was the same trick that other guy did, unless you're a magician, right?
Right. Well, yeah.
You know what was really scary for me was going down there. I practiced before I did my week, you know, because in the basement, they have little tiny showrooms where you can sort of organize with other magicians that are club members. Hey, I want to do a 15-minute set. You want to do 15 minutes after me? And you can set up a room and you just trade for a few hours with a couple guys just so you can get flight time, just so you can practice, you know?
Right.
And I remember just quaking in my boots because it was like, wow, if I'm doing this, I'm probably going to see more club members. And wow, I don't know if I'm ready to do this for magicians. There was all this like weird phobia stuff going on.
Sure.
And the opposite was the truth, right? I finished like my first few sets down there and I had this group of like 3 guys that came up to me and they're like, hey, we're magicians and we just joined the club this year and we just want to say thank you because it was just really great to watch you perform. And it was the opposite. These guys were just there to see magic. They just wanted to see examples of good magic so they could love on magic. They were not guys that were thinking like, I'm going to be working here soon. They're just fans of magic. They love the fact that this club exists. They can see people do magic. The library's there. You can research whatever you want. It's a great club for learning magic, right? And a lot of these guys, they know their place. You know, they just want to give compliments where it's due. And I'm sure the opposite's true. I'm sure there were jerks there. I never encountered them. I encountered people that were, you know, famous magicians that were really nice to me. Yeah. Say, hey, man, it's your first time at the castle. I'm totally not going to come and see you. I want you to have a good time.
Right. Ron Porter says Jack Goldfinger tries to book acts that are not doing the same material in the same week. So, that
could be the case. When I was down there, you know, I think it was a lot looser than it is nowadays, you know, because we're talking, well, geez, like 10, 15 years ago when I first started doing castle stuff, you know.
Well, that answers Mike Sproul's question. He wanted to know what year it was.
Yeah, it was like around like 2000. Well, yeah, I guess not 15. It was like 2008 was my first like proper week.
Okay.
So, yeah.
2008.
Yeah.
Okay. I would have guessed earlier because I guess I met Adam in 1990, 2000 maybe.
And that makes sense because the reality is I didn't meet them until they were established enough in the castle to get invited to run a night or a weekend at the W.C. Fields bar, right? So that makes sense.
Okay. Timelines, when you
Sure.
get
Well, sometimes you do the math later.
People, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I know for a while, like, I mean, I guess we'd say Conjuror Community started proper 6 years ago.
Sure.
6 or 7 years ago, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And but you've been here like from the beginning, like just helping teach and things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, from the very first, like
well, I actually saw it in the beginning stages when it wasn't even CC, because Aaron lived here for a while. He lived in Northern California for a little bit, real close to me. And at that time, he was trying to figure out a new way of being, because he came from Hollywood, working corporate gigs, working private gigs that come off of being at the castle. And
reminds me of that Andy Kaufman. Have you seen that video? Andy Kaufman. I'm from Hollywood. Never seen that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The wrestling bit, totally.
Yeah,
I'm from Hollywood, totally. It's very funny. I forgot about that. Well, I'm from Hollywood. See, I'm important, right? So he had come from there, and he had sort of changed gears. He had made a conscious decision that he was going to basically spend more time working on his lecture business and making that something that fit into what the internet was offering at the time in terms of being able to connect with people, right?
Right.
And he was trying to create the ultimate portal to have people interact. And all of this was, was all precursors to CC, right? But it just equated to him doing private lessons, a lot of private lessons. And like, I think that's where the pathways were born out of that, out of him doing all that teaching. He realized that there was common threads, that if I just put this out as a thing, it's probably going to connect to more people than I could just one-on-one, right?
Right.
So that was born out of him teaching there. And then, then he changed his life. He moved out of California, and that dream just got bigger, and eventually it became what we know now as CC, right?
And yeah, and at some point he had you doing your old job of bagging cards.
That's right. Yeah. He was putting together classes, and he was doing teaching, and basically if these guys were, involved in the class, they had to get the gift pack, right? They had to get all the tools to be able to participate in class, right? It's like the beginning of the school year where they give you the list and go buy glue, go buy tape, go buy file art. It was like that, right? They had to buy the sponge balls, the coins, get a thumb tip, all the tools that you need so that you could have a conversation with Aaron. And in the beginning of that, all that stuff was being stored in my garage, and I was shipping a couple times a week to make sure that everybody got their stuff so that they could play and do lessons. And that was the beginning of it.
And now I have it all.
Now you have it all. Okay. Thank you, Ethan.
If anybody wants some Alexander Slemmer packaged blue panics, you just let me know. I got it right here for you. Now, Richie, 2020 Kanji nominee for Best Mastermind Moment, Richie Dabrowskis.
Oh, I know Richie.
Has a question.
Yes.
He wanted to know if you could choose only one magic set or book, I guess, for your life. I guess you're Tom Hanks.
Oh, like a desert island. Like what's my desert island magic book? And
you have a volleyball and a magic book or deck or trick.
It changes. I'll tell you what it is right now.
Okay. But
it changes. Like I've had several different books that have made that list, and the more I think about it, the more I think of like I think it was like in the 40s and the 50s, there was this common thing that magicians would do in their books. They would say something like, "This is my 12 inches of books," where they would say like, "This is how all the books that are on my bookshelf. I only have 12, 13 inches of it, but these are the titles," right?
Right.
And maybe that's the answer, because then I could probably get all of them. But if I had to, I can say it's two at this point. For ideas and for basically for fodder, for tricks that are going to last me for the rest of my life, source material that's good material. One is, without a doubt, is that John Thompson book, 2-volume set of these things over here.
Ooh, visual aids.
Yeah, these books are amazing. The material that's in these books is really just, it's the best of these versions. It's the best versions of these tricks that exist, in my opinion. Again and again, when I go through these books, I say, man, I wish when I was first starting to do magic that I had access to this information. Right. It's like the definitive version of all those effects that exist in that book, right? I think you could probably make a living just on the material in that book and, never have to look in another magic book. So that, and then the creative version of that I would say, because it's more unfinished tricks. They're not like complete presentations, but they're like germs of ideas that like, it seems like it's a bottomless well. And that's the Impromptu Encyclopedia of Magic that Martin Gardner put out. There was a recent reprint of it. It's been out of print for a lot of years, but yeah, this thing, I guess I did get the new one too. That's just the dust jacket to it. But this is the new version of that Martin Gardner, the Impromptu. But this was my original one, the Encyclopedia of Impromptu Magic, Martin Gardner. This book has got all of the self-working tricks, all of the little anomalies, all the stunts. Martin Gardner collected these things for years, and all of those little germs you can see in Magic, right? The best germs out of here became like full-blown routines. But I think if you're looking to be creative and find new ways and new things that are you, this is great source material. So I would say those two for now. Like I said, it changes.
hold up the John Thompson set again. I think Steve wanted a closer look at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I definitely watched that documentary on Showtime they had.
Oh, the Gambler's Ballad.
Gambler's Ballad.
Yeah, that was awesome, right?
And that guy's hands were pretty magical.
Yeah, for those that are interested right now, Potter and Potter has all of his stuff. And they're getting ready to auction it off. I think maybe first week of May, something like that. But you could buy Johnny Thompson's actual cups for cups and balls. Silver-plated cups with the Egyptian hieroglyphics carved into them. They're actually going to be for sale. Like,
do they know what are they estimating those?
Yeah, like $4 or $5 grand or something is the estimate that they'll get.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Gilmore sold his guitars.
Say it again.
David Gilmour sold his guitars for charity.
I did see that. That was an amazing thing.
Yeah. And then he gave
just to be in the room with one of those, that would be so cool, right?
They did a tour of them too.
Oh, really?
Like LA, they went to New York with them.
Wow. It was just like a museum. You could like someone set up a thing where you could go and like stand next to his guitars. That's pretty cool.
Rayon Jackson wants to know how much these books are on CC. I don't know. I can't.
They aren't available from CC. I don't even know if they're in print anymore. So go and find them. That's probably at this point like an eBay purchase. There might be some dealers that have them out there, but I think all of the copies that are printed are out there. I don't think they were ever available at a place that our distributor would never get them. So we would never have them on CC, unfortunately.
Michael Sproul says somebody I've never heard of, Copperfield, will pick them up. I can't read what that says.
Okay.
Yeah, Copperfield. I was kidding.
Yeah. He will.
Yeah.
And he'll probably pay 10 grand and not bat an eye. And it is what it is. It goes in the glass case over there.
Definitely saw him with Aaron and my father in Virginia when I was younger.
David Copperfield. Yeah, I love the David Copperfield show, man. I still think it's David. I've seen him on good nights and I've seen him on bad nights. Some nights he's really passionate about it and it's a beautiful thing. But it's magic-wise, it's like one of the greatest shows that's ever been. It's so good. The magic is so strong. And when I was a kid, that was another thing that happened to me. I was fortunate that I bumped into Chris Kenner. Chris Kenner is the guy who basically develops all the magic for the Copperfield show and has for like 20 years, right? He put out a book in the 90s with Richard Kaufman, and it was one of my favorite magic books. It still is, one of my favorite magic books. I love it. It's not the Desert Island book, but I love the book.
Right.
I went to the David Copperfield show in Tahoe. Lake Tahoe is, a couple hours away from me, right? And a lot of big national acts will come to Tahoe if they don't come to Sacramento proper, because I'm in Northern California. There's some place I can drive, even if it's San Francisco. I can see pretty much all the major entertainment that's touring around the country in one way or another. Even, the most I'll have to drive is 2-3 hours, and I can see pretty much anything. Right. Copperfield was doing a run in Tahoe because he had he still has it. He's in Vegas, I think, with Caesars. I think he's had a contract with Caesars, since like the 80s or something.
Right.
So he was doing a week at Caesars. I was married at the time, and I was doing a lot of professional shows, and I would get this question that would come up again and again. Hey, have you ever seen the David Copperfield show? No, haven't seen it. Seen him on TV. It's great. Right. Well, I'm going to be doing magic shows. I'm not going to stop doing magic shows. Probably should go see that David Copperfield show, So I take my wife. We go see the David Copperfield show. Spent more money on tickets than I should have. We were totally like against the stage. And for reference, it's about the time that David's still doing flying on stage, right? So a long time ago.
That might have been when I saw
early
it
90s.
too.
Yeah.
There's a big motorcycle thing at the end.
That might have been the closer then. I don't remember.
You just cracked my brain open because I remember that flying thing when it was on TV.
It's great, right?
And I haven't thought about that in a long time, and that was a big deal.
That was a big deal, man.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
Yeah, he was flying.
Okay.
He was flying.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing it live going, wow, how? It's so good, you know?
Right.
But what happened out of that is that I brought my Chris Kenner book, my Totally Out of Control book, for one simple reason. Because David Copperfield wrote the introduction, and I was going to get David Copperfield's autograph.
Nice. And is that what that is?
So I brought this book to the David Copperfield show to get it signed, and I'm standing in line because at the time, David was still signing every autograph of everybody that cared because he had like a world record for the most autographs signed, right?
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Totally. And he's trying to make sure he keeps that record forever. So I'm standing there with this book, standing with my ex-wife, waiting to go meet David Copperfield. And this dude comes walking up with a hand truck. He's wheeling programs to sell programs so David could sign them, right? He wheels them up and he stops right in front of me. And he's like, wow, no shit. That's my book. He's like, what? He's like, that's my book. Flips over his laminate. I'm Chris Kenner. It's like, whoa, wow. Well, forget about David. I have so many questions for you, man. I need to talk to you. And Chris was like, wow, right on. Let's talk. I got to do this thing. You know, I work for David. I got to help him sign autographs. But after that's over, let's hang out. Let's talk. It's like, right on. I was like, listen, Davey, I'm so sorry. This is Matt, this guy, he's here. He said he'd hang out with me. Go gamble, right? It's in a casino or in Tahoe. It's great. She's like, all right, I'm going to go gamble. It's fine.
Right.
So I meet Chris after the show. He gives me his business card, and he's like, listen, man, I'm sorry I led you on, but we have a comedian that came in to watch the show tonight, and he's helping us write lines for a new trick that we're working on. I have to go up into the hotel suite. We have to work. We have to watch the videotapes and do all this. So I'm really sorry, but here's my card. Next time I'm anywhere near you, call me and let's hang out. Really? Yeah, we'll get lunch. We'll get dinner or something, man. Let's hang out. I was like, all right. So sure enough, he came to Sacramento and he played like the sports arena where the basketball team plays.
Right.
Copperfield's there, and I go down there and I see him. He's like, hey, let's hang out. And we go to lunch, and we go to lunch with Doc Wayne. I don't know if you know Doc Wayne. He's like, he's passed now, but he's like one of the major illusion builders for David Copperfield. So we sit down and we're having lunch and we're talking shop about magic, and you know, and I have all these theories about things, and you know, and Chris is like, you young guy, you're so cute. You know, he loved that I love magic as much as I did. And what happened out of that was sort of a mini mentorship because he saw that I was hungry.
Right.
He knew that there was not much going on in Northern California other than these conventions, but he knew I was meeting a lot of these guys that he was friendly with. And he started like sort of lighting the path for me. Hey, go talk to this guy. Ask him about that. Go talk to Michael Weber. He's a friend of mine. Tell him that you're friends with me. He'll sit with you. He'll talk with you like that, right? Just using the power of, you know, all who you know to like get in. Like I started dropping the name of this guy that I was friendly with or I was friends with, and doors were opening and people were like telling me things they wouldn't have told me otherwise. And all of a sudden I'm sitting at tables I shouldn't be sitting at. And David Copperfield and Chris Kenner opened a lot of doors for me and opened up magic for me in a way that it probably wouldn't have opened otherwise. You know what I mean? So I'm real fortunate that I've sort of been right place at the right time and had these little dream moments that have occurred that have, you know, made it so that I can keep on chasing it with the passion that I've been chasing it. You know what I mean?
Definitely get the feeling like when I find myself in a situation where we're at a summit and we go to lunch and it's the lunch where Aaron and Jim Steinmeier are out to lunch, and it's you and it's Adam and it's Jim.
Yeah.
There are a couple guys there, you know, you feel like, you know, I just want to sit there and be quiet because I know that this is rarefied air.
Yeah.
Even if I don't completely understand, I understand like the importance of it. And it's awesome. It's an awesome story. The whole story. Great.
And that moment with Jim Steinmeier, that was amazing when we were sitting and talking with him, because we had all these little private moments because we were sort of behind the scenes with Jim.
Yeah.
And that guy was laying down like history stories like, wow, really? I had no idea. Tell us more.
It's stuff I knew I shouldn't repeat. I just, yeah.
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 But how wonderful, right? I mean, that's a real good reflection of what it was like, right?
Yeah.
I just was invited to sit with people, and I was doing what you were doing. Just shut your mouth, man. Just sit here and listen. You are a student.
Yeah. Speak when you're spoken to.
Yeah, pretty much.
Did you watch Big Mouth on Netflix when it came on?
I love Big Mouth. I thought it was hilarious.
Okay, so they have that character.
We blew up a boat.
It's a very adult show, not meant for kids. Okay,
no doubt.
But there's definitely a kid in there that is a magician.
Yeah, he certainly is. Yeah.
And so when he goes, you said going back into your magic clubs or whatever, you go in the back room, you see the guy sitting there and at the Seattle Magic store where you bought your first trick.
Sure.
And there's a couple scenes in Big Mouth where Jay, the magic kid, walks into the back, and it's this table, and it's these magic guys, and they're very specifically drawn magic guys. And that's the image that flashed in my mind, because I have to assume those are based on real people. And
right. I wish I could remember the caricatures. They aren't popping into my head immediately.
Okay.
But that's totally a real thing. Like the magic store here in Sacramento, they have a back room where there's like, you go in this hallway and it looks like it's a brick wall, and then you get this candelabra that's on the shelf, and you tilt it to the side, and the door slides open, and you go into this back room where there's a round table, and that's where the guys are talking about the real secrets, right? It's like got all those elements so that you get in your heart, like all those, wow, it's like a movie, it's like a book, it's so mysterious, all that stuff is like bubbling up in you as you go through this doorway to go into the secret room. Yeah, I think a lot of magic stores really have that, and they're, once the secret's told, the trick is sold, right? You go in the back room and learn it, you can't get your money back.
and my favorite part of that is, like, in the later episodes, they show him, in his room or whatever, and he's always got magic. The character's really well formed into this magic.
Oh, they clearly had a magic writer on staff.
Oh, yeah.
Like, all of his stuff was authentic. That was like, he was really a magic kid.
And on the wall is a picture of the dudes at the table that he saw in the previous episodes.
I remember
like
that.
At the table.
That's right. I remember that now. That's funny.
Well, I mean, I just really quickly, if anyone wants to throw in a question, we're going to wrap up.
Ask away.
But while I'm here, if any new members are watching, I just want to point out all the house shows that we have, because we have these great lectures that we call Mega Nights. We've had Danny Goldsmith. Like, in the past 2 weeks, we've had like Danny Goldsmith and Larry Wilmore, right? And they've all gone over 2 hours, and it's just been this gooey awesomeness, right?
Yeah.
So, but we have a ton of house shows here. I just want to go over them real quick.
Certainly.
We have, and if you want to throw out a brief description, I'll say what they are.
Cool.
There's Our Favorite Tricks.
Yeah, I love Our Favorite Tricks. Our Favorite Tricks is like my way to like go into my past and like find all the cool ideas that I've ever worked on and ever touched, and fully flesh them out again, and be able to share it with people. And I know that everybody else that does it, they have a similar feeling, right? It's like, it's just a way to go and revisit old friends and like kick the dust off of things and like breathe new life into things. And, it's really cool, because sometimes life moves quick, man. And if you don't go back and go and look at what you've done in the past, you just forget it, and this is like an opportunity to bring these things back to life and remember where I was when I first looked into these things, and all the associated magicians that were around that I was talking with about these things. And to me, it's like igniting a little flame of passion, right? That sort of went out or was like on low heat. So it's, I love Our Favorite Tricks. They're so much fun, because not only do I get to do that for myself, but then I get to be exposed to, what all the other folks are working on, all the other folks on the panel, what they're working on. And sometimes it brings back memories of things that I was working on or whatever. It's just inspiration all around. And I would say that inspirational is probably the word that I can attach to most every one of the CC events, at least for me,
Right on. We have a newer one that we've done 2 of, and I'm sure we're going to do it again. Slight Night.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, huh? It's weird, because on the surface, it's sort of like disjointed moves that we're sort of taking out of context, because generally when you're working on a move, you want it to be surrounded by a trick so that it, the structure of the trick is making it invisible. But sometimes when you're talking about tricks, we talk about a move and we can only talk about the move for a couple minutes, and it's not the proper amount of time so that someone can actually learn these moves. And some of the moves that I brought into Slight Night are, I wouldn't have been able to talk about them the way that I was talking about them in Slight Night in any other context. So for that, it's sort of like opening up. It's like when you're in a video game and, you know, you have a slow connection and you go into a spot and you wait for like the landscape to open up. It's like that, like a whole landscape opens up because of that, you know? So it's cool. It's very cool.
It's like when you're doing a puzzle and you're sitting there and there's pieces everywhere, but you find two that go together, and that leads, and it's been 4 hours, and then you do half the puzzle in 20 minutes because it all comes together.
That's a great analogy. Totally.
Yeah. We have professionally speaking, which is just, I think, aspects of, you know, the business of magic, and Steve Barcelona usually does that.
Yeah. And Adam, man, those in the beginning, I sort of had a couple blind spots in the business end of what I was doing for magic. And boy, I would imagine if I went through all that stuff again right now, I would find all kinds of new things that I could do for my business. Those are a service. That information that's in those shows, that's a service that you can't get from any other magic company, right? I don't think there's any magic folks that have written books that have the kind of information that's there. I mean, that alone, in my mind, if you're a working magician, that alone is worth the price of CC.
Yeah, it's like my dad always said, you know, they teach you how to be a lawyer in law school. They don't teach you how to run a law office.
Right. There's a difference between business and yeah. Yep.
We have the Alexander Slemmer showcase Finer Points, which is what you do, right?
Yeah.
Like
that's my opportunity to do like real deep dives on stuff, right? It's really cool because it's sort of like what Sleight Night is to a move. That's what those finer points are to an effect, right? So I can discuss all the ins and outs, all the different inspirations and different places I might like to go, but more importantly, why everything's doing what it's doing in a real delicate, detailed way, so that most importantly, if you're watching one of those APs, you walk out of that experience with, I think I can do that trick, right? That was the goal the whole time. But I think when those happen, you know, those finer points in the APs, it comes out. I think that there's so much information that you're like, I think I've got more than what I need to do this thing. Now the only thing that's left is I have to do the work and see it through, right? So, you know, at least that's the hope, is that I give you enough so that you don't need to talk to me unless you have a question maybe after it's over, right?
Right. Yeah. And in fact, I've asked you questions before because, you know, people think that I would pick up anything from Aaron, but everything I've tried to pick up, which I've only started in the past year of doing little, not very much at all comes from your Miracle Force formula.
Success.
Because what I need is I can't go to my brother and say, hey, how do I hold card? I don't know why. I'm sure he would tell me.
I know.
It's just a mental block. But I need someone to say, you hold it like this.
You know what's going to be interesting,
like this. Yeah,
is when you feel confident enough as a magician that you just start jamming with your brother on magic. That's going to be a beautiful day. I hope I get to be in the room.
My son will probably be there before I will.
Okay.
Yeah. CC Choice, which is newer.
Yeah.
Yeah. People seem to really like that.
I do too. I wish that there was a show like that when I was first doing magic, because I've spent so much money on just junk magic. I like to call them drawer tricks, right? They're a trick that you buy, that you look at, you read, you go through it. Ooh, I love the gimmick. This is really neat. Put it all back in that plastic bag and it goes into that drawer. Maybe I'll get to that again one day. And right. You never do. It's just a drawer trick. It just lives in the drawer. That's the reason you bought it, was to put in that drawer. I have so many drawer tricks that CC Choice would have helped me from making those bad mistakes. And, you know, it's cool. We have access to all of it, and we can sort of be jovial about it, because sometimes these things are such bad stinkers. The only thing we can do is sort of have a laugh about it, because it's like, who had the audacity to put that out on the market? You know, and it gives us a little levity, a little bit of a moment where we can just sort of giggle about, well, magic is weird, isn't it? You know, but yeah, it's what a great thing to be able to look at all the tricks and make educated decisions, right?
Do you guys, what are the fingers on the lights on the fingers from the magazines? D-lights?
The light.
Are those in your drawer? Is that in your drawer somewhere?
No, you know what? That's actually in my case.
Oh, okay.
I used to do a bit with D-light that was like, it was the way to get attention across the room. There used to be this guy, I think he had a fake name. He called himself like Lazar or Laser or something like that was his last name, but he made a whole business off of selling lights that go with D-lights, right? Because the D-light, they made a business out of selling D-lights, right? Right. Those guys are all millionaires because they sell that light up finger, right?
Right.
So this guy made a whole business going to conventions of having a table laid out with all these different LEDs that would be accoutrement to go along with your D-light. And I bought one because he did it to me, and it made my eyes pop out of my head. And I did it for probably the first 3 or 4 years that I did close-up magic professionally. I did this thing. It's a little LED that you have sit on your shirt. And it's literally like an LED from a circuit board.
Yeah.
And you stab it through the fabric of your jacket, like on your lapel, right? And the tines of the LED or the little brackets from the LED go through your clothing, and you put a little battery on it with a little, like a broccoli rubber band, like a real thick rubber band, so it holds that battery in place. Right. The effect is that there's a little LED lit up. It's red light that's sitting there. But because it's such a small LED, it creates this illusion that it looks like it's floating like maybe like a quarter of an inch above your lapel.
Right.
And it's a weird illusion that happens. And that was my opener for a long time, because I would just walk up, that thing would be on my lapel, and people go, "What is that?" And I go, "This? Oh, it's one of these."
Right. That's cool.
And I'd pull the light off, I'd hold it, and I'd put it back. They go, "What?" I go, "Here, let me show you a trick. I'm here to do magic."
So when's that
like they invited me to perform, right?
When's the D-Light or finer points coming?
Oh, right. when I can get a big bag of those LEDs that we can sell through CC.
Right. The last one, I mean, it's my favorite. It's Member Mastermind, but that's basically members come on, they show us what they got, and you give them there's been some really amazing analysis and things that have helped people recently. Thinking about Edmund and his Southern Scoundrel character. I'm thinking about lots of things. It's a great night.
Right. Well, again, inspirational, right? I mean, how can you not be inspired by seeing people doing all that work? And how can you not say one little word or give a kind little phrase somewhere when someone's so close to the finish line, right? To me, that's what it's like. I just see people that are like, "Whoa, you're right there. Do this and this." And I bet you'll feel real good about that, right? I mean, it's because really, there's not much I can say. You've already done the work. You got here. You're at this point. But if you're like that close to the finish line, if I can give a little poke, a little push that's going to get you over it and make you feel better about it, get that thing out on the streets and start doing it for people. You created this thing, right? You are interpreting this piece of magic that's alive in the history of magic, but now you're breathing new life into it because you worked it out and you have it in your hands. Your body's performing this for people. Boy, what a gift. Go share it with everybody. I think that's one of the great things about magic, is that you can share this thing that you love, this mysterious feeling that you get out of magic. You can now put that into the world of form and share that with people and make them feel better about life. That's it. That's what it's all about. That's the whole game right there.
Maybe that's that puts us and Aaron's head when someone asked him about the gravity of half pass on a couch in Vegas.
There we go. And it all led to here.
Right. All right. Well, I mean, thanks so much for being here. I got, this has been fun.
Yeah.
I really like talking to you. You're the most, so positive talking to you all the time. Always feel full after. You're a bucket filler. And I'll just leave you with, I like to leave with one question that I feel like is really thoughtful, and I put a lot of thought into it.
Okay.
So I came up with this while we were talking, but here it is. You kept talking about the things and getting into a community as you were younger, and you had to do all these things. You had to work at this place. You had to do this show after 3 years. You met Aaron. You formed this friendship, and you work at the castle. How different would this have been if there was a CC when you were that age?
It's funny that you say that, Ethan, because the reality is we say that all the time. We have reflection points where we just go, man, for instance, we just had that lecture the other night, all of us going, man, how awesome. And we start reflecting on, we say that after every one of these lectures. And then we go, man, again and again, I wish there was something like this when I was first doing magic. It would have saved so much time. And I probably would have better relationships with humans in general, just because I would be in these relationships with magicians. And, those examples would be examples of how to live in real life. If I was a kid and I had that going on, it probably would have changed who I was socially. It probably would have been an up ramp to getting things to where I am as an adult. I probably would have got there quicker if I would have had something like CC when I was younger, because, you have to communicate if you want to get the information. And, you have to communicate in a big group like this, and you have to be cool, right? Or else you're not going to be communicated to.
Right.
And if I would have learned that skill in a much more classy way as a younger man, I probably would have saved myself a lot of time.
Touche, ditto. All those things.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I know it's after lunch here for me, but it's just before lunch for you.
Yeah, time to eat.
So thank you so much for being here. And, thanks for watching, everybody. Hi, Jeff.
Thanks, everybody.
And thanks for everything. And we'll talk to you soon, guys. Hopefully we'll be here next Friday with somebody. Bye.